This is a must-see video from Kristofer Goldsmith, and anybody who knows Kristofer Goldsmith knows that he's a vet who studies how to fight fascism. This is a must-see regarding Kash Patel.
A lot of folks are asking right now, who is Kash Patel and how did he become FBI director? And if you've tuned into the news at all, you probably know a little bit of this guy's background, but in this video, I want to give you some more concerning stuff than I think you've probably seen in the news. I'm going to tell you a story about an infiltration that I did at an extremist conference organized by this guy. Yes, that's me undercover. That's the disgraced former General Mike Flynn. So shortly before the midterm elections in 2022, I went to Branson, Missouri, which the locals call the Las Vegas of the Ozarks. If you've never been there or never heard of this place, it's kind of like if you had Las Vegas, but it was designed by Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. In this conference that I went to, I was pretending to be a radicalized veteran who believed in all sorts of conspiracy theories, of the type that Mike Flynn was really flirting with a lot. So this Reawaken tour was a Christian nationalist tour that traveled the country. It was organized by Mike Flynn and Clay Clark, these serial grifters. And I went to this venue that says on the website that it seats 3,000, and they sold 4,000 tickets. Now, I had watched a couple of versions of this before because they live streamed them, like full day of programming. And yeah, I had sat there for like 8 hours at a time with this kind of in the background in case anything important happened as I do research at home. But words fail me when I try to communicate what it was like to actually be in the room with these people. And while I knew what I was getting into, like I knew who these people were, and I had seen the programming before because I watched the live stream, what I didn't realize until I got there was that there was like more than 12 hours of programming. So while the live stream cameras would be on for like 8 hours, there would be a lot of wild shit that was happening that never got live streamed. So there were like 4,000 people packed into this auditorium, and these are like true MAGA believers. A common theme on stage was people talking about how their families had completely rejected them because they believed in all of these conspiracy theories that they believed is true. And like a cult, the leaders on the stage would say, "You're being rejected because you're right and they can't handle it." And at this Christian nationalist conference, they were blending politics and religion in a way that I think would scare most people who are patriotic and or religious. Now, I knew that there was a religious element, again, because I've watched the live stream, but being in the room and being in the crowd was insane. It kind of had the feeling of a megachurch, of people, raising their arms and crying and praying together. But this was in the context of people being on stage, Mike Flynn included, talking about how Democrats were satanic or demonic. And they weren't using this language hyperbolically. They were saying it as if this is true. There were people coming up on stage who were identified by the organizers of this conference as prophets. That included a woman pastor who came up and spoke, saying that she was speaking for God. Not that she was interpreting what God wanted, but that the words coming out of her mouth were dictated by God, as if she were possessed. There were pastors who were going up and speaking in tongues. They did that thing where they pull injured people or sick people out of the crowd and touch their head and they pretend to pass out and convulse on the floor. And this auditorium was absolutely packed with people. And as I was looking around, there wasn't anyone who was like, what the fuck is happening here? Everyone who went to this thing, 4,000 people, were true believers in everything that was happening. There was this one guy, Jim Meehan, who said he was a veteran and that he was a doctor, and he was in this fight against the government and mandates and that kind of thing. And he gave a PowerPoint presentation that was all about preparing people for war. He was telling people that there was going to be a civil war and a world war. And I don't think I can say out loud what he said, so I'm going to take a little snippet right here and show you. Just freeze it if you want to read this. Now, it was in this context that Kash Patel, the man who is now our FBI director, went on stage. So between pastors speaking in tongues, pastors saying that they are prophets, pastors saying that they are speaking with God's voice, Kash Patel went on the stage and started talking about how this is a room full of Christian warriors. And during his speech, which he gave at many of these things around the country, he talked about the corruption in the FBI. He talked about the need to dismantle justice as it exists in the United States. And in all of this context, he started talking about his children's books. Kash Patel wrote a series of children's books with the goal of brainwashing children and sucking up to Donald Trump. In this series of books, Kash Patel is a wizard, and Donald Trump is a king. And in this series of books, Kash plays the hero who saves the king. And in this book, he does that by basically creating an allegory about the election, promoting the stolen election lie for toddlers. At this conference, they were talking about how journalists and Democrats and anti-fascists needed to be. They were talking about rounding us all up. They were talking about preparing for a civil war. And they truly, genuinely believed that God was telling them to do this. Now, I went to just one of these. There were dozens of versions of this all around the country, put on by Mike Flynn, who always talks about raising an army for Trump. And the man who is now our FBI director, your FBI director and my FBI director, Kash Patel, he's an associate of all this. So after this infiltration, I wrote a 24-page intelligence report. I took hours of video and took hundreds of photographs. And I just published an article about that experience, about the intelligence that I gathered there. So if you're interested in getting the whole story, go to onoffense.substack.com. And if somebody in your life is persuadable when they see this kind of really concerning Christian nationalist stuff, do me a favor and share this article with them. And let me know in the comments if it makes a difference.